Hi, my name's Amanda Huber, and I am a community outreach coordinator for All Elite Wrestling. I've worked with All Elite Wrestling for about a year now, and I ended up in All Elite Wrestling because, unfortunately, my husband, who better known as Brodie Lee, was a wrestler for All Elite Wrestling, and he unfortunately passed away. A little bit about us: we met in 2002 when I graduated high school. I started pro wrestling. And I met this guy who was friends of friends, and we started wrestling together, we started training together, and we kind of hit it off. We had a very on-again, off-again relationship, as people do in their early 20s and late teens, but we kept finding our way back to each other. So we traveled the world together, wrestling, and his career started to take off. So in January of 2012, we had a little boy named Brodie. And right after that, he got signed with the WWE, and he was brought down to their developmental system and worked his way through that, where he became WWE superstar Luke Harper. He's a former Intercontinental Champion, former WWE Tag Champion, had matches at WrestleMania, and wrestled all over the globe. A couple years later, we had our son Nolan in 2017, and we had a really great, happy family life. Jon loved wrestling. It's all he's ever wanted to do, all he ever wanted to be when he was a kid. So when All Elite Wrestling kind of started to come up, it presented this opportunity for him. And he had the opportunity to either stay with WWE or bet on himself and leave somewhere safe to try something new. And he came to AEW and debuted as Mr. Brodie Lee and had a chance to shine. Unfortunately, his debut was the first week the pandemic really hit the country, so he debuted to an empty stadium. But he spent the rest of the pandemic working at AEW, wrestling matches, and becoming who he needed to be. Unfortunately, in October of 2020, he started to not feel well. We originally thought he had COVID. He had all the typical symptoms. We quarantined, and he ended up in the hospital, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. We were in the hospital in our hometown of Tampa, Florida, for about a week, till they said it was too much and we needed to transfer. And we were airlifted on Halloween, October 31st, 2020, from Tampa, Florida to Jacksonville to go to the Mayo Clinic, where he spent the next about 2 months on life support, trying everything we could to figure out what was wrong. The official diagnosis was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, where his lungs scarred up and they could not heal. We tried everything, and unfortunately, the scarring, it was too much for him. So on December 26th, the day after Christmas, we had to make the decision to let him go. That day, I was surrounded by the community of pro wrestling. I had people drive 6 hours to be with me in that day. We said goodbye to him, and that day I did the hardest thing I've ever done. The worst moment of my life, hands down, was telling my son that his dad wasn't going to make it. I was always very real with him the entire time while he was sick. And I would tell him when we'd have good days, and I'd tell him when we'd have bad days. And I would always assure him that we'd always had the best doctors in the world working on him. But if he had a good day, it was a good day. And some days were bad days. But I always kept it safe, always kept it positive. And I'll never forget, I knew it was coming. I knew the end was there. And Christmas Eve, I drove back from Jacksonville to spend Christmas with my kids. I wanted to give them one last day of normal, one last day that they could enjoy a world where their dad was still in it. We had a great Christmas. They got some surprises from Santa, and I just spent the day with my kids and my brother-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my husband's aunt and uncle. And the plan was for me to leave that night and drive back to Jacksonville because we were going to let him go in the morning. So that night I went to say goodbye to Brodie, who was 8 years old at the time. And I said, hey, I told him it was time for bed, and he was very tired. And he said, I don't want you to leave. I said, well, you'll see me in the morning. I'm just going to drive up tonight. And he finally asked me the worst question that he could ask me is Dad going to die? And I couldn't tell him. So I said, this is not the time. And he said, why won't you answer me? I said, because you're tired, and this is not the time to have this discussion. I said, I need you to go to bed. And he cried and held him, and he cried. And I said he had the best doctors in the world, and that I was going to go be there with him. So I kissed him. He fell asleep in my arms, and then I drove to Jacksonville. Like I said, the next day, we knew it was the end. And I had Cody Rhodes drive 6 hours from Atlanta on the day after Christmas, and Big E drive 3 hours from Tampa the day after Christmas to be in the hotel room with me when I told Brodie. So we brought Brodie into the hotel room, and he got to see his two favorite people in the world. And I said, we've got some really, really tough things to talk about. And he knew. And I said, Dad's not going to make it, bud. And it will forever be the worst moment of my life. Losing my husband was tough, but nothing was more soul-crushing. And we held him. I told him everything was going to be okay, that he had us, and that he could cry, he could be angry, he could scream, whatever he needed, because it hurt, and it hurt us. And seeing him go through that was easily the worst moment of my life. We held him. Cody and Biggie and I took turns cradling him and just talking to him, telling him how much we loved him, how much his dad loved him, and how we're always going to be there for him. And this is not the end of loving his dad. So we let him go that afternoon. And I got really, really lucky in the sense that that day, Cody Rhodes ended up taking Brodie to the beach in Jacksonville, and they flew kites. And he had this beautiful moment and beautiful day with somebody who loved him so much and loved his dad so much. In the days after Jon died, I got really, really lucky in the fact that I had an incredible support system around me. The people of AEW went above and beyond for my kids and myself. The entire locker room took it just as hard as kind of we did, because they were filled with his friends and his family and people we've known for 20 years. And I got really, really lucky with Tony Khan, because he did something that's never been done before. He put his entire show on hold. And he said, I'm going to do a celebration of his life. It's not going to be just a graphic. It's not going to be just a 10-bell salute. It's going to be the entire program. And I said, Tony, you don't have to do that. You're running a business. You don't have to put everything on hold for us. And he said, no, this is important. And what ended up happening was Tony Khan put on this incredible, incredible show, from top to bottom, featuring all the people who were close with us, all the members of the Dark Order, and all these different parts of this to create this special, special moment.
Tony, we got an amazing show tonight and a very unique main event.
Team Chads will be in the main event. They'll be going up against the team of Dark Order's 10, Orange Cassidy, and Cody Rhodes. This is Little Brodie -1's favorite trio of Cassidy, Cody Rhodes, and Dark Order 10.
He approved everything through me, and I remember him calling me, And I go, and Tony, this is your show. I don't care who wins. And he goes, no, 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 this is important. Is it okay if I put this person in? I said, whatever you want to do. He goes, no, 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 this is important. And I also owe Tony Khan a big thank you because a lot of people don't realize he's kind of the reason why Brodie wears a mask. My son, lovingly known to all of AEW as -1. My husband, while he was in AEW, was Mr. Brodie Lee. He was the chosen one of the Dark Order. So it made sense that my son became, because he's not old enough to be the chosen one, he's -1. And we had planned on doing the 10-bell salute in the beginning of the show, which is one of the highest honors in professional wrestling. We had everybody on the stage. And Tony wanted to protect Brodie in that moment, wanted to let him grieve and wanted to let him cry without it being a focal piece. He didn't want the camera shots on a crying kid. He didn't want those heartstrings tugged. He wanted to protect Brodie and let him be in that moment, but also have his shield up. So to me, that spoke so highly of him.
It's Wednesday, and you know what that means as we welcome you to a celebration of life of Mr. Brodie Lee. And to get it started, we'll send it down to Justin Roberts.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as we toll the bell 10 times to honor the memory of Brodie Lee.
And it was a little hard doing the 10-bell salute because my youngest was on the stage with us as well, and he had no idea what was going on. He was 3 at the time, or he had just turned 3 right before Jon passed. So he had no idea what was going on. He just was happy to be there. He wanted to wave to people, and he was so cute on the stage. And one of the hardest parts of that night for me was on the 10-bell salute. I picked him up, and his face was looking at the screen behind me, and he's in my ear, and he goes, "Hey, that's my dad. Where is he?" And he started looking around, and I was like, all right, we need to get off this. So dealing with the grief with a 3-year-old as well as an 8-year-old was very, was different, and it was hard. And I got really lucky with everybody there loving my husband, and so many people shared stories, and they created these beautiful video packages, and my coworkers and his coworkers talking and sharing stories about him that are going to live forever, that my sons are always going to have, to know the kind of man their dad was.
I never had a harder time coming up with words in front of a camera than right now. What more can be said about Brodie Lee that hasn't already been said, but that's the comforting part. To see the outpouring, the incredible outpouring from all over the world, from the fans who respected Brodie Lee to all the people in this business that he touched with his presence, his smile, his sarcastic wit, his levity. Brodie liked to stir the pot. He liked to get guys all riled up just for the entertainment of the locker room. And that's the kind of guy he was. He brought joy to the people around him. I had the privilege of spending over a decade with Brodie on a journey from armories and bingo halls to packed arenas and stadiums. Brodie loved being a dad. Husband and father above all else. This was just a job. He used to tell me about it all the time. "Oh, it's great, you're gonna love it." I said, "No, not for me. I like being able to do whatever I want. You know, stay out all night, order Chinese food at 2 a.m. He says, "I wouldn't trade you for the world." And 2020 has hit us all hard over and over and over, some harder than others. But this, to give an analogy that I think Brodie would like, is like a pride soccer style kick right to the face of the pro wrestling community. But when I think of what I've learned over this year, as the calendar turns over to 2021, when I think of Amanda and the kids, I realize that's exactly what pro wrestling is. It's a community. It's not just a sport, it is a community. When the chips are down, we support each other. We love each other. Men and women from all over the world brought together by this one thing that we love. And tonight we come together again to rage against the dying of the light, to celebrate a great human being whose legacy, I hope, inspires us all to be a little bit better of a person every single day, to appreciate the people we love around us every single day, to appreciate, stop and smell the roses every single sunset, every sunrise, every day. I know I will. Because every day is a gift, every day is special. And every day that I got to spend with Brodie was just all the more special, and I'm grateful for that. And I love you, brother. And I'll never forget you.
In the ring, he was scary. He was dirty looking. He had this big beard and a mean face. And when he was in WWE and he was Luke Harper, he came out with this stained shirt, tank top, and looked like a wild swamp man. And then he came here and he was this big monster. He's always so serious looking. And knowing the man behind that was so kind and so funny and just everything you want a person to be. And hearing the stories and hearing our friends share those stories and saying what a good human he was. And that's something my kids get to grow up with, and hearing these stories about their dad and having these memories. And this is everything AEW's done and all these stories that they've collected are things that my son can show his kids when he has kids and say, this was who your grandpa was. And this is who Nolan, when he gets a little older and he wants to hear more about his dad, because he lost a lot of time with his dad. And that's a whole other process to handle, knowing that while my 8-year-old, his grief felt so much heavier because he was so close, I also had to deal with the loss and the grief of knowing that Nolan would never have those memories. He'd never have those moments. He'd never have all of the things that Brodie got to do with his dad because Nolan was too young for that. He won't have those memories. So we keep his memory alive through all of our friends, all of our family, and we work with our kids.
I had to write this memo the other day, and I was looking for a quote, just something that would encapsulate somebody like Brodie Lee, and I came across this Samuel Johnson quote. I probably will butcher it, but I think you'll understand it. It says, "You can judge a man's character by how he treats somebody who can do him no good." Over the past week, we've heard all these stories of all these different people, these degrees of separation who were positively affected by Brodie Lee. There has never been a wrestler in every company, in every locker room, with every member of management to have that one-to-one connection, and that's why everyone is affected so deeply. In short, he was a beautiful man And he leaves behind a beautiful legacy, and I want to introduce to you that legacy right now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome -1, Brodie Lee Jr.
Brodie Lee Jr., -1. You, your family, these boots are retired. Your father, the greatest TNT champion, with all due respect, the greatest TNT champion we've ever had. To you and your family, the TNT champion for life.
Holding the title that...
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. We're here to honor one of the not only wrestling's greatest champions, but one of wrestling's greatest men, and a man who has one of wrestling's greatest families. And they're here tonight, and we put a special tribute together, and there's no better way for us to end the show tonight than this. So here's a tribute to a great man. Here's a tribute to Mr. Brodie Lee.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Brodie Lee, and I am the Exalted One.
Well, my time went so quickly, I went lickety-splickly out to my old 55. As I pulled away slowly, feeling so holy, God knows I was feeling alive. Now the sun's coming
So for my family, children's grief obviously is very much at the center. I can tell you the best thing I did for my kids was get them into therapy. Back in December of 2020, when I knew things weren't looking great, I had the luxury of having time to prepare. And so I immediately called a therapist and said, hi, I'd like to get my son signed up with you and start the process, because I didn't want it to be a situation where he was, he lost his dad, and I'm like, okay, here, go talk to this stranger. I know a lot of families don't have that luxury, but I don't want that to stop them in getting help and getting those resources. Through him working with his therapist, he's found somebody to talk to that he can talk to completely objectively. It gives him a space to share his feelings and learn how to process. As most people know, when you hear things from a parent or somebody close to you, you might not hear it as well as sometimes a stranger telling you the exact same information and the light bulb clicks. He's had this opportunity to work with his therapist, and in doing so, he's been able to communicate with me when he's feeling things are heavy, when he's feeling really missing his dad. So he's worked really well with that, and worked well with working with his breathing techniques, working with journaling, working with memory writing, and all of these elements that worked on top of that. As a parent who's going through this grief along with my kids, and I'm on this journey with my kids, I also have to take care of my grief on top of two other people's. So by bringing somebody else in to help was the biggest thing for me. And so that way I can still manage his grief, but I'm not the only one managing it. I've learned in this whole thing that I'm not alone. And even when it feels like your world's completely turned upside down and you lose the center of it, you're not alone in that. And I've been really, really blessed with the community I've found and with the support, and having the support and resources like Children's Grief Awareness Day that shows that these kids are still feeling everything just as deeply as we do, even if they don't express it. If you see videos or pictures of my kids, they are joyful, beautiful little boys who are living a happy life. But that doesn't mean that their world wasn't crushed. Their world was turned upside down, and they missed their dad every single day. We talk about him all the time. Holidays are especially heavy in our house because that presence is gone. The holidays are forever stained on Halloween and Christmas and Thanksgiving because of his absence and the timing of his passing. I've gone out of my way to make sure all of those holidays are special, but we still talk about those feelings and those heaviness. Halloween just passed, and that was one of the things Brodie had said to me is, I wish Dad could have seen this. I said, I think he's watching. He would have thought you were really cool. Because he had dressed up as Edward Scissorhands, which I thought was a real fun choice, because it's not something you'd think a 10-year-old in 2022 would want to be, and he was just the coolest kid there. But letting him feel that and letting him just miss his dad and talk about those things and talk about the times he misses him and the times where it's really hard. Nolan's just starting to talk more about him. And as a 5-year-old, or soon to be 5-year-old, he'll be 5 next month, that grief comes out in really weird ways. Comes out with a lot of his toys playing dead, and a lot of talk of death, which makes it as a parent really, really hard. I've learned it's completely normal, but it's still really hard. And so being able to let our kids grieve and let our kids feel what they need to feel and be sad. They don't have to fake happy. They don't have to put on a show for everybody. They don't have to be strong. When I was working with the Highmark Caring Place and I had spoke with them, we were discussing a big part of children's grief. And one of the parts of my story that stuck out to them and that I shared with them, and I want to share it with whoever happens to be watching this. is shortly after my husband passed away, I had some very well-meaning friends tell me that they had a sit-down with Brodie where they told him that he was the man of the house. And I tell you, I lost my temper like nobody's business. The curse words were flying, and I was seeing red. And I said, don't you dare. He is not the man of the house. He is 8 years old. I'm the man of the house now. I'm the woman of the house. I'm the adult. I don't need a man of the house. I'm the adult of the house. He is the kid of the house. He is the 8-year-old of the house, and that's all he needs to be. He does not need the stress or pressure. He is not my partner. He is not my companion. He is a kid, and he gets to be a kid. And I think that is the message I want, is to let your kids be kids. Let them feel grief. They don't have to be an adult. And I've had multiple talks with Brodie over the past 2 years on him stepping up with some of his chores, not because he's, my partner, not because his dad's gone. He steps up with his chores because he's a year older now, and he's going to be a functional adult one day, and I need him to help out. I don't ask Brodie to do anything that I wouldn't ask if his dad was still alive. He gets to be a kid. Anybody who's met my kids will tell you how joyful and how much they enjoy playing and running around and how happy they are because we let them be kids. I understand that I'm very privileged and that not everybody has these luxuries, but please, if you are going through grief, get your kids help, get your kids the support they need, let them be little and let them be kids. The world's gonna grow them up. Let them be little for as long as they can and enjoy this joy and fun. And let them feel sad when they need to, but also understand that that sadness doesn't express the same way adults show sadness. I hope this piece helps anybody else out there. And please check out the resources with Highmark Hearing Place in Children's Grief Awareness Day. Thank you.